Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of Unlearn with Bianca. On this podcast, we explore everything around self-healing, health, personal growth, the mind-body connection, relationships, and more. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. Today, I am going to be answering your questions. We got a mixed bag of questions, so I'm just going to jump straight into it. Advice 101 with Bianca. All right, first question is around purpose, transitions, and career change. Any advice around finding my purpose? I recently left a job which left me feeling unfulfilled and stuck after a few years. I'm glad I left, but I'm nervous about having the same unfulfilled feeling in the next role I take. Okay, I like this question. I like it because I feel like a lot of us can relate to this one. It sounds like you are in a transition phase. And first of all, I want to say well done. Well done for making a choice, it sounds like it was your choice, whether it was your choice or imposed upon you. You have made a decision to leave something that is not serving you. And I think that is courageous. And it's not easy to do when we can have all of the internal dialogue around just stick it out, it is what it is. Everybody's unhappy. I commend you for making a different choice because believe it or not, you are already one step further to being in alignment with yourself just by making that decision. There are so many ways I could take the answer to this question, but I think a lot of it would depend on where you were at in life, what responsibilities you had, any urgent responsibilities, where your finances were at, because all of that comes into it, right? But it does sound like you have left a job, you haven't yet stepped into a new role, and you're in a bit of a liminal space where you have got some time to think. Now, the term purpose is a funny thing because I used to think that I had to go searching for this grand, big mission purpose, and when the right thing came, it would feel right and everything would be good. But we know life doesn't work like that. And I think the first thing I would say is take the pressure off. We have such high expectations of ourselves, first of all, to make our work fulfilling or to become our purpose. And I honestly think that is not the truth for everyone. If you can have purpose come through in other parts of your life as well. So maybe this is a season where you really get to go inwards and work on your own personal development so that you can begin to get curious about what really lights you up. I also want to say that there is no rush. You have a lot of time. This goes for everyone. Okay, we shouldn't be in a rush because fulfillment and purpose, it's more of an unfolding thing. It's more of a journey, and it comes back to how are we living in alignment with ourselves. Now, there's this concept that I really, really like, and it's called Ikigai. Some of you guys might have heard of it before. It's a Japanese concept that translates to reason for being, and it connects 4 really important elements to help you identify where your purpose may lie. So I'm going to go through what each of the 4 elements is, and everyone listening can think about this and how it applies to their own life as well. But for the person that asked the question, I think this is really important to take some time and connect to these 4 concepts. I would also recommend staying really curious about that previous job because it sounds like you were unfulfilled. There were things that weren't working. Was it a values clash? Was it that your innate skills and your passions were different than what you were doing at work? Was it a people thing? I want you to really identify what wasn't working in that previous role. What about it was not working for you so that you have some more data, some more knowledge as you start to look for jobs or as you start to take steps forward in your life. Because that's one thing that we should all get really used to doing is using history and reflecting on that history, whether it be jobs, people, etc., and really taking that time to reflect and think about what aligned for me and what didn't align for me from that experience. Okay, so back to Ikigai. I love this concept. It's all about finding your purpose. And again, let's just take the pressure off purpose. It's such a big, grandiose word. Let's just bring it back. So, number 1, thinking about what you love. I want you, if you're in the same phase of life and really thinking about where does my purpose lie, I want you to focus on activities that really energize and excite you. So taking the focus off work primarily and even bringing it into the rest of your life, starting to do things in the background that really energize you, that excite you, where you're having fun, thinking about those moments where you feel most alive and connected to your inner self. Because this is like our flow state. This is where we find things to be really easy, where we're in the zone. Thinking about those times where you've done a hobby or an interest or you've had a conversation and time has just flown. And the other thing to consider is, what have you always felt drawn to, even as a child? Like for me, I used to love, this is funny guys, I used to love Super Nanny. Does anyone remember that Super Nanny show where that British lady used to go in and go into households and help with the naughty children and help discipline them? I used to love that show, and I always used to find it so interesting around what tactics she'd use, the psychology of it. And, I have ended up in a career where I am helping people, looking at behavior, looking at habits. So sometimes we forget that we had these little things when we were younger that we really used to connect to, that we really used to enjoy. And I encourage you to think about what these were. Maybe you're someone who has a passion for helping somebody. Maybe you're someone who loves spending time in nature, and what you've been doing to this point has not aligned with that. So it's starting to think about what really gets me excited, what really makes me feel good. It's easy for us to really compartmentalize work versus personal life. But when we're talking about purpose, it's about being in alignment with yourself, your whole self. So pose that question. What activities energize and excite you? The second element of Ikigai is what you are good at. What are your skills and talents? I want you to reflect on your natural strengths and abilities and think about what other people ask you for advice on. What are your friends and family, what do they go to you for? Because that will give you an idea of where your skills really lie. For example, I know for sure I'm not going to be the first person that people think of when they're looking to get some practical go-to fix-it advice. I'm just not that girl. But I know I have my other strengths, okay? So what are your strengths? What are your abilities? Are you more of a logical person? Are you more able to see blind spots that people can't see in relationships and interactions? Are you known for being a caring person? Are you known for being really methodical? We all have our unique strengths. We all are blessed with our individual gifts. And it's starting to question, what skills do you excel in, and are there areas where you feel really confident and competent? The third element of Ikigai, to discover your purpose, is what the world needs. So where can you make an impact? This is really important when it comes to purpose, and I think this is why so many of us feel unfulfilled. It's because it's hard for us sometimes to connect to, when we're doing something, what the bigger impact of that is. For example, if you're working within a business, of course you're having a bigger impact, but if you're not getting constant reminders of how impactful your work is, or you're showing up every day and it's really monotonous, you might forget that your work is having a bigger impact. So it's really important, I think, for our soul that we can connect to something larger than ourselves. And it also takes this spotlight off ourselves and onto other people, which is really positive for our mental health. So looking at how you can contribute to others or solve problems in your community, and that might just be a local community or further afield. Questions that you can start to ask yourself are, what causes and issues are you really passionate about? Is there anything in particular that really fires you up when you speak, or you really want to support a particular cause? And then thinking about how you can use your skills to serve and to make a difference in this area is a great place to start. So far we've got combining what you love with what you're good at, your skills and talents, and then thinking about what the world needs. And the last element of Ikigai is what you can be paid for. Now, this is the part that makes it sustainable. I think this is the final element. It's a nice to have, but it's finding ways to monetize all of the above, your passions and your skills, in a way that supports you. And questions to explore around this is there a market for what you love and do well? Can you create a career, or can you start applying for jobs with all of the information above? Or can you create a side hustle from the intersection of all four of these elements? When all four of those elements that we've just spoken on overlap, that is what the Japanese called ikigai. And that is what they would refer to as your purpose. So if we come back to that original question, you've left a job that's not longer in alignment with you. You are worried that you might be in the same position with your next role. I would say take the pressure off. You have got time, because our purpose is an unfolding process. It's actually about being the most truest version of yourself, and that is enough. Okay, it's not some massive thing, and it doesn't always have to come through the paid work we do as well. So take the small steps. Do things in your spare time that start to light you up again. Get really curious. This is the road to a really purposeful life. One more thing I would say is stop comparing yourself to others. Everybody's lives are so different. Everybody's purpose and fulfillment comes from different things. So the best thing we can do is just focus on ourselves and feeling best within. I really believe that my purpose is still unfolding. I'm still testing the waters in certain areas. There have definitely been times where I've taken jobs for money where I have not been super fulfilled. But at the same time, it's about being curious around the other elements of your life and what really lights you up. And always being in that state of curiosity. I think that is the most important thing. And I think the fact that you are asking the hard questions, the fact that you've made a major step, it shows me that you know there is more. And that is a really powerful place to be, because I can assure you there will be more when you continue on your path. Okay, guys, second question. I've got advice around fear of setting boundaries and fear of judgment from other people. With some context, it sounds like this person has gone through some internal changes and they're not resonating with friends like they used to, perhaps feeling like they're not on the same page at the moment and feeling like there is some judgment from their current choices. I love this question because it's one that so many of us, I think, can relate to. So the first thing is boundaries. And actually, no, I want to circle back. I want to say that this is so valid because as humans, we have this innate need for connection between each other. So when you're growing and when you're having internal changes, it can be a really isolating experience. I have been there multiple times, whether it's able to be seen from the outside, I don't know, but just feeling like as you go through shifts internally, you're not quite resonating with things that you used to really resonate with. You're not wanting to do things that you once found a lot of joy and fun in. And that is just part of the change process. That is just inevitable. And I think we all know that, as we go through life, we outgrow some things, shift, change, all of the above. So it sounds like this person has a bit of a adverse sort of feeling towards boundaries. And I want to help you reframe them a bit because I've been here too. So boundaries, when we're thinking about boundaries, often we think that we need to put this electric fence around us and that boundaries are used to keep people out. That can feel like resistance. It can feel like walls. And if we're thinking of it like that, it can be quite energy taxing. And I can understand why people have resistance and fear around setting boundaries. But how I really come to see boundaries is boundaries are more about actually defining who you are, what currently works for you, what currently doesn't work for you, who you will allow into your life and who you won't allow into your life at this point. So I want you to see them more as permeable, changeable, a little bit more fluid than just a wall. And I think that's really important. They're also about defining your current priorities. Boundaries are an act of self-respect They are a way to honor your needs, your space, your energy, whether that be a physical boundary, so saying no to a certain commitment, an emotional boundary, so having some distance between maybe a friend that is constantly coming to you with problems, or an energetic boundary. Okay, so when we set really clear and loving boundaries, I want to remind you that we're not pushing others away, but we're choosing what aligns with us in this present moment and what doesn't. And it's about consciously deciding what you want to invite into your life at this point in time. And I say at this point in time because it doesn't mean it will be forever. Maybe you just need the space to figure out what is working for you, what's not working for you. Maybe you just need a bit of space from this friend, or perhaps the activities you once did together, or whatever it is, just so you can you can see what's currently working. But what I'm trying to get at here is it doesn't have to be a black and white thing. And I want to acknowledge that it's not always easy to set boundaries with people that we haven't fallen out with, that we just feel like we need some space from. It is a really difficult thing, but it is possible. And it's about you giving your space to define what your current needs are. I don't know the ins and outs of the situation, but one thing I will say is that when you do make a new choice, when you do set a boundary, when you show up in a new way, you can expect people to not always agree with it. You can expect people to have some resistance. You can expect people to have some judgment. And although this is uncomfortable, this is part of the process. And this is where a lot of people, myself included in the past, will end up caving because it's like, oh, that discomfort of them not liking me or disagreeing with me is too much to handle. And you go back to letting people into your space or doing things that are no longer in alignment. So if you can learn to actually just first of all accept that showing up in new ways will mean that there will be some resistance back, that is the first thing. That is normal and that is part of growth. Now, judgment is a really interesting thing because, first of all, we have all judged people before. Like anyone that says they haven't, they're lying. We've definitely all done it. And something that is so true about judgment is that when you are receiving other people's judgments, it's not about your inherent worth. I want to say that again. It's not about your inherent worth. It's often stemming from their own fears, their own insecurities, or their own conditioning. I do believe that we really need to listen to people's concerns. We really need to listen and respect what people have to say. But if it's purely from a place of judgment, that is usually coming from fears and insecurities. Or you might be getting judged by expressing a part of yourself that the person who's judging you hasn't yet accepted or acknowledged within their own self. So, what do I mean by that? So, let's say somebody is going through a lot of really internal growth and change, and they decide, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to step into my confidence and I'm going to start sharing my singing videos on social media. Let's just take that as an example. And the person judging you, although it can feel scary to receive that, the person judging you for putting up singing videos, deep down, there's probably a part of them behind the judgment thinking, I wish I had that freedom. I wish I could do things like that, express myself like that, and have the audacity and the courage to do that and not care what other people think. So behind judgment, there's often a sneaky little desire or a fear. Okay, and I really want you to sit with that, because if we can lean into that, then we can actually understand and give compassion to people that judge, that react and respond. And no, it's not about us. It's not about you. It's not about your inherent worth. You've got to do you. You've got to go through your changes. And I think sometimes if you are going through growth and, you're not resonating with friends or things that you used to do, make sure you are communicating with love and openness and understanding. But at the end of the day, just know that judgment is not about you, and trust that people that see you for you and encourage you and support you will be the ones that stay in your life. One thing I've learned about judgment, honestly, is that you're going to get judged if you do, and you're going to get judged if you don't. So you may as well just show up as you. Like, who gives a shit about the haters? Show up as you and keep doing you. Make those boundaries flexible. Come from a loving place and learn to be okay with the discomfort. Okay, guys, I'm going through the questions. We've got one here on signs of a dysregulated nervous system. I think I might do its own episode for that one because it's going to be a biggie. And there's another one here from a client. This is actually a really good one around how to look after your nervous system during an injury or illness. For example, getting an injury, how not to get into the pain cycle. Now, this is a really good one that I've actually been meaning to talk about. Now, for context, this is a client who had an injury, had some chronic pain, moved through the chronic pain back into a good place, and is currently going through pregnancy, and a few symptoms have popped back up that mimic the pain that this person used to have. So how can we stop going from worst to worst case scenario? Now, for anyone who has had chronic symptoms, you will get this. You will get this. You will understand this. The distinction between knowing what is normal symptoms versus the fear around chronic symptoms coming back. Not enough people talk about this as part of a recovery. Learning the distinction between what is considered, aka normal part of life, because we all do headaches and have aches and pains from time to time and days of tiredness, versus fear around chronic symptoms coming back. So I want to say to this person and also people that have had chronic symptoms, because I have had this question before, I want you to remember that your brain, especially in the early stages of recovery, is naturally going to be more hypervigilant to certain sensations and symptoms. And that's purely to protect you from a negative experience you have had in the past. So remember, it's like your brain has coded, it's coded to keep you safe, it's coded to protect you. And that is exactly what goes on where an ache or pain or flu comes on and our brain goes into a bit of natural fear based on previous illness experiences. Because I want to say chronic illness can leave an imprint, and I will truly say that. I'll give you guys some examples actually. When I first overcome chronic pain, for those of you who have never listened to this before, I used to have chronic pain for years, every day, and then I overcame it, moved through it to the point where I was having complete comfort. So about 6 months into this new life, this comfortable life, I had some, what I thought were like these little itchy bites on my back, just a few, and they were itchy, but nothing else was really going on. And there were no other like alarming or concerning symptoms, but I went to the GP to get some cream because they were just really itchy. Anyway, the GP looked at these, what I thought were bites. He took one look and he's like, I think that's shingles. And me, having been somebody who had experienced chronic pain, nerve pain, burning sensations, straight away, I remember going into tightness in the body, a little bit of fear, because I naturally did a little bit of fear around, oh no, is this the start of something again? Okay, because that's natural, right? I'd had this previous years of chronic pain. So a typical person that will go to the doctor and have that, they especially a 24-year-old would have no idea probably of what shingles was and would have no heightened awareness to the word or the thought of shingles. They just roll with it, take the medication and rest, right? But based on my previous experience, there was some extra fear there. Another example was when I really started getting back into the gym and lifting weights. The next day, my muscles would be really sore. And I'd be thinking, is this, because I used to have some muscular pain, I'd be like, is this chronic pain or is this DOMS, delayed on muscle onset, whatever it's called? And that distinction was really hard. It was really hard to distinguish what I should be concerned about versus not concerned about. A lot of my clients get in touch, for example, my long COVID clients, if they have overcome long COVID and they're back on track and then they get COVID again, naturally there could be a little bit of fear come up. And it totally makes sense, right? So I think the first thing to say to this point is it makes sense. That's it. It makes sense that there's a little bit of fear there, but there doesn't need to be fear there. And there's a few reasons for that. How can we look after our nervous system? What reminders do you need to hear? The first thing is always distinguishing, is this just a passing symptom, or is this something that's been lingering for a few days? And let's say it's been lingering for a few days or a consistent amount of time. Go get your tests done, go rule everything out so that you have peace of mind that, hey, this is nothing I need to be worried about. This is not a new injury. This is not a new infection, whatever it is. Just do that to get peace of mind. In the instance of pregnancy, of course, there are a lot of structural changes. There's a lot going on, and, getting things checked can just put your mind at ease as well. Now, the key word here, which is the biggest thing that our nervous system needs, is safety and reminders of trust. So I would write down, or if you've done coaching with me, you know how to coach yourself through the lightning process. I would remind yourself or write down, where has your body shown you that it has recovered and got back on track before? For example, it might be that day that you're coming off the back of a flu and you're starting to feel better. That is your body moving through a process, and that's you remembering, I can trust my body because it knows what to do. Maybe it is, for my lightning process clients, it's that moment where things just clicked and you started getting relief from your symptoms. That is your body showing you it has exactly what it needs within to do what it needs to do to recover. So evidence of trust, times when you trusted your body, and really building that evidence bank. Where have I seen this symptom before and it's gone away? What are the times I've had relief from this type of symptom? Write all that down or coach yourself on that. That is the first step. Think about memories as well of times when you really trusted in your body, when your body was feeling really good, and sit with those memories too. If it's a mind-body symptom and it's just old neurology and old physiology that's been sparked up from previous experiences, it's likely that the symptoms will be a bit changeable. They might come and go. It might be the same sorts of symptoms that you used to have. And that's another reason that it's likely just remnants of your brain being in protection mode from the past. My clients know that in these moments where we get triggered from stuff from the past, it requires a lot of self-compassion, a lot of patience, a lot of trust, and knowing that this too shall pass. I truly believe this too shall pass. I have had moments of fear, moments of doubt as well, of like, am I going back to where I was? And, I've had so much time since I've done anything chronic that I've finally built that trust back in my system. But no, it can just take a bit of time. I want you to also think about those looping thoughts of fear of, for example, what if this pain stays? What if this fatigue stays? How long is this going to last for? What if this is going to last forever? Like all of those sorts of fears, catch them when you can and remind yourself that your nervous system is in a new time and space than last time when you had chronic symptoms. Because often when people first have chronic symptoms, they had a lot going on at the time, or they were in a completely different space and time. So remind yourself of that as well, that your body knows what to do. In terms of looking after your nervous system, I would just say, make sure that you do things that make you feel good. Move in the way that feels good. Really focus on your breath. If you're in a more sympathetic, heightened state of fear, slow your breath down, slow everything down, nourish your body, make sure you're eating enough food, and really importantly, make sure you're around supportive people that can remind you that you've got this. Make sure if you are getting tests and things done or you're seeing any other practitioners, make sure they're people that really believe in you, that support you, that can reassure you, because this is super important. We want to really filter out people that have our best interests at heart and people that believe in our body's ability to heal also. And I will just finish saying, for all my clients that have been back in touch with me because I've had a little bit of a blip, they've been a bit triggered from the past, or they've got the flu again, got COVID again, got some headaches or pain back, all of them have gotten back on track again and built even more trust in their body. So I want to reassure anyone that's listening to this that it's totally normal. It's common. It's just part of the ups and downs of the healing process, and you've got this. And the last question for today, because this is turning into a lengthy one and I'm going to do a part 2. What advice would you give somebody supporting a cousin through grief? And I got a bit more context around this question from the person who asked, and it sounds like it's relatively new grief, a loss of a loved one. And what I'll start by saying is thank you for asking this question. I think well done for looking for ways to learn and to support yourself to support somebody else. So I'll start by saying that everybody deals with grief differently, but I do think that there are some common threads and common things that would be beneficial for anyone navigating loss or grief of some kind. I think the best thing people can do to support someone going through grief is to be super honest. Why do I say that? I say that because a lot of people get so uncomfortable that they don't know what to say and therefore they don't say anything. And that just puts more pressure on the person that's already navigating loss. And that isn't the case for this person because they've asked the question and they're really willing to learn. But for anyone listening who's like, oh, I don't know what to say, I'm better not to say anything, I really encourage you just to be really honest. So the first thing is say how you truthfully feel. It could be like, hey, look, I don't know what to say in this situation, but just so you know, I am thinking of you. And the person who is navigating loss, I can assure you, they are not going to judge you for you not knowing what to say. It's just about sending the message or saying what is truthfully on your heart, not trying to get it right or wrong, because honestly, there's no right or wrong in this situation. But do send a message to show that person that you're thinking of them, and don't necessarily expect them to reply, because the toll of moving through grief mentally and physically is so big that you're in straight survival mode, and it's really hard to have that capacity to deal with things and people in life. So as a cousin, I would say, depending on how close you are, obviously, have those touch points and just say, I'm thinking of you. Depending on how close you are, I'm picking you up at this time, or we're going to do something next weekend. So sort of taking the lead a bit if you feel like this person would respond well to that. But at the same time, just know that if you're touching base and you're just leaving messages saying you don't need to reply, there's no pressure to reply, I can assure you that that's going to be very well received and appreciated. If you can do practical things and if there's any opportunity to take the mental load off the person who's grieving, of course, that's also going to be really well received if done with respect as well. Another thing that I think is really important to note and to be comfortable with is talking about the person that has passed with the person that is grieving, whether that be open to hearing stories or sharing stories or listening to memories or saying their name, anything like that. There's this misconception that if I, as someone trying to support someone through grief, if I bring that person up, I'm going to trigger them. I want you to know for damn sure that if someone's grieving, they're already deep in grief and they're already thinking about the person they lost a lot. So by you bringing up their name, by you bringing up a memory, it's not going to trigger them because they're already in it, especially in the initial stages, okay? So don't have fear around bringing up the person that they loved and lost. I think it's a really important part of the healing journey. The next thing is listen and create space for that person just to be. So again, it's kind of the same concept of you don't need to know what to say. There's nothing that you can say that's going to take the pain away, but if you can just get used to showing up, to creating the space for that person to share whatever's on their mind, whether they don't talk about it, they do talk about it. If you're doing an activity, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just having that space to be present with somebody. It's so, so important. It's just so important for all of us. We need to get used to holding people through difficult moments, because this is what really creates connection, and this is where people can start to be vulnerable and share the load. So, showing up, creating space, and just a listening ear is, I think, one of the most powerful things we can do. And finally, to this beautiful person that is really supporting their cousin just by asking this question. Give them grace. What I mean by that is give them grace to change, give them grace to go through a really messy process, and don't place expectations on that person to be the exact same person, to always show up in a certain way that you knew them as or to be, especially if it's a loss of someone prominent in their life. I think it's inevitable that people change and sometimes relationships change, and that's all okay. It's part of the process. Yeah, that's all I would say on that, is just let go of expectations of who you think that person needs or should be in that moment, and just be with them as much as possible as they go through that, even in micro moments, or even just reaching out if you're not in close proximity. You're doing everything you can. As someone who has and still does navigate grief, I'm so grateful for the people who really take time to ask questions, to learn and hold space for me. So I want to reassure you that it never goes unnoticed. Although there are a lot of things from that time period that are hazy in my memory, one thing for sure I haven't forgotten about is the people that continually showed up for me. So remember that it's super, super important. And actually, as we finish this episode on a grief question, I want to say to my people that are grieving, to listeners that are going through it in another way, take care of yourself and show yourself some compassion, especially at this time of the year. I know it can bring up a lot for us, I say myself included, and allow yourself to have those feelings. Find joy and presence in the small moments, and take a moment to appreciate yourself or to think about how far you've come, because it's times of the year like this, as we approach the end of the year, that we really need to do that, and it's always nice to reflect. Okay, my beautiful listeners, I hope you all enjoyed today's quick Q&A. I will do more over the next few episodes. And I hope you all have, I don't know when this is actually going to come out, but if it hasn't come out before Christmas, I hope you all have a stunning, beautiful Christmas with family and friends. Thank you again for taking the time to listen in, to share, to ask me questions. I will be back next week with a bit of a year wrap up, and I'll be sharing more about offerings and services I have in the coming year. And if you have any other questions from today's episode, you're more than welcome to get in touch through Instagram. I'll leave everything, all my contact details in the show notes. Have a beautiful week, guys. See you on the next episode.